Today on the podcast, we have my good friend Stacy Aguilar, who is my favorite graphic designer. Everything she does is amazing. Stacy Aguilar heads up a boutique brand and web design studio for small business owners, educators, coaches, and creative go-getters. She has a particular love and expertise in supporting online course and program creators get their knowledge out into the world to empower and equip others. We talk about all things branding and when you should brand, if you should DIY or invest in someone. And we even get into some really cool AI stuff that blew my mind and you don't want to miss it. So let's go ahead and dive into the episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Course Creation Mama podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Bowden, and I have my good friend, Stacy Aguilar here. She is an amazing graphic designer. She has done basically all of my branding for both businesses. I trust her with anything branding related, so I can't wait to chat with her. So, Stacy, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, of course. I'm excited to talk.
I am too. So, okay, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name is Stacy Aguilar, and I'm a brand and web designer, and I mostly work with course creators, coaches, educators, public speakers, kind of that realm. Basically, anyone who uses their thought leadership and knowledge to help others is kind of how I view it, or just like support others doing what they're doing. So that kind of space. And I work a lot with, like I said, people who do courses, who are launching courses, who need support with sales pages or graphics and things around that, but also branding and website for their businesses in general is kind of the area.
Yeah, so you kind of do all the things branding wise, and you've done all the things for me, so I know from Instagram graphics to like a complete rebrand, she's done it all for me. So, okay, so how did you get into that? How did you get into graphic design? Tell us the story.
So I always think back. So I started doing more design and learning more about kind of graphic design as a profession when I was in graduate school for something else. I went to graduate school for policy and nonprofit management at NYU. And while I was there, I started learning more about like communications and marketing for nonprofits and mission-minded businesses. And so I was doing like social media for a like this social entrepreneurship. Basically, they're providing local food in the city. So they're bringing local foods in the city. And so I was getting paid with food for one summer, just random little projects that I was learning all about social media, marketing, communications. And that's kind of, I really enjoyed that space and really enjoyed learning a skill that I could then apply in lots of different areas. And so eventually after graduating, well, I eventually started doing account management at an ad agency. And so I started learning more about the strategy side and client management side of things and kind of did that. Even when I came back to Texas, I was working at ad agencies on the strategy side until I decided to shift gears and go to be a teacher. So then I started teaching at an all-girls public school, and I was the graphic design teacher, which was so much fun. And I learned a ton, by teaching things, you learn even more about things. And so it just was really a great season of life to like kind of learn and grow in that space. And then I started doing freelance projects while I was teaching. And once my second kiddo was born, I left the classroom. So it was about 5 years in the classroom. And then I just started doing stuff from home. So I kind of started locally with some small businesses here, and I'm based in Texas in Fort Worth. And then kind of started realizing there's this whole space of online entrepreneurs, education, teacher entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of where I focused for a bit. And that's kind of where, my business has evolved since then, but that's kind of the path.
That's so cool. And so do you always feel like you were artistic or like did you paint growing up? Because graphic design is like a really hard skill, I think. It's not something that you
I
can
think
learn.
back, yeah, I think back at like when I was trying to learn, or like I felt like I couldn't figure out how to get in the door. Like I felt like I had to formally be trained, or I don't know. I just like felt like I didn't know the programs. I remember going out in Brooklyn when like there's an area that's much more developed now, or it has changed a lot now. But back then it was kind of scary at night to go out to. But I was really there was this like co-working space before that was popular. This was like 10 something years ago. So I would go out there and take this little class in the dark room learning Photoshop. So it was the guy sitting at the front with the little head mic, and we're all on the little computers learning how to do Photoshop. So I remember like really early on trying to get a handle on like how to use these programs. Like there wasn't YouTube wasn't as popular. Like it was just like it was a lot more elusive. And I remember paying a friend, like we went to a coffee shop and I got her a latte and I was like, okay, how do I use Adobe Illustrator? Like, and I just tried to pick her brain. So a lot of it was like me at the beginning trying to figure out the stuff. And then, yeah, over time, I guess I just kind of fumbled around. So creative, yes, I was creative. My mom is very crafty and artsy. So I have like that kind of background, I guess. And I used to draw, but otherwise, I don't know. Um, I think there's lots of different spaces for graphic design. I think some people are really illustrative and have beautiful hand drawn work and hand drawn lettering and all this stuff, and that's not really my space. I feel like I think more modularly, which is like just kind of in looking at open space and layout and things like that. Thinking more like magazine layout kind of space. It's a lot different than like illustrative design. So there's kind of different areas. But yeah.
That's really cool. I'm not talking about freelance work in this episode, but I do like to talk about other streams of income. So I feel like that's a really good point for anyone that wants to get into the freelance space. You don't necessarily have to have a degree or formal training. It can just be like you on the weekend figuring it out and teaching yourself and then slowly getting clients. So that's a really cool story. I don't think I knew that. Okay, so let's get into the topic for today's episode though, branding. So tell me, we have a lot of course creators listening, obviously, and when they hear branding, they probably think logos and colors. But
Mhm.
what is branding to you, and why is it important to an online course creator?
So I think of branding really as like what makes your course or your business unique when people are scrolling through Instagram or whatever. When they're thinking about your brand, you get like a split second for someone to make a decision about your brand. And so it's really more the story that wraps around your business. It's how you're making people feel when they think about your business. I like to think about coffee shops, for example. So there's a few coffee shops in our city that they're great. They all have fantastic coffee. There's nothing wrong with the coffee. It's just some have a more edgy vibe. Like the seats are steel and they're black. It's black and metal inside and it's cool. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
And then there's another coffee shop that is warm and it's filled with sunlight and plants and art and it's colorful and it's just comfortable and that, but like it depends on what you like, what connect with you. And so branding, it's more than the logo. The logo helps people remember you, like, I don't know, it just helps, like, this is your thing, like it's a brand, right? Like, branding used to be for cattle. They used to brand the cattle, like the logo. Like it's a way to mark you, but it doesn't create the feelings that you're trying to create with your brand. And so like with your brand, we really wanted to focus on like kind of that adventure vibe, like you're creating opportunities for your family to go and do and be beyond, 9 to 5 or whatever, right? You're helping people create alternative income paths. And so we're really trying to create that feeling of like excitement and wonder. And so it's more about, like I said, the story. And with that comes colors and fonts and language and images and logos and that stuff to help create that. But I really like to go back to the feelings that you're trying to evoke in your audience.
Yeah, I like that. I like the coffee shop reference because there are certain coffee shops that, like, I may not like the coffee, but I just like sitting there and working because of the vibe. So you're right. Like it'll attract me because of their brand.
Yeah.
Okay, so when someone is brand new and they don't have any type of branding, they don't have a website, I usually get this question: do I need a website right now before I get ready to launch my course? And my opinion is no, because you don't have any money yet. But I'm very curious about your opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, as a website designer, I feel, no, I'm kidding. It's just, I'm what I call a clicker. So I like to, if I'm going to invest in something, I like to click around on someone's site, on their social, on their reviews, on things to see if they feel legitimate to me. And only having a sales page and no social or anything to support that feels a little it just makes me feel uneasy about it, and kind of depends on the level of investment too. If it's like a $35 thing, then maybe that's not as big of a deal. But if you're trying to sell like a 200 to 500, 600, whatever, um so I think it kind of depends on the level of investment of the person that you're asking for them to trust you, right? And so those things help build trust. Having I think at minimum, like a home page and like an about page. And then like I think social is important, having some activity on social media, but pick one, like Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But I think it just all those things just help create trust. And so I think as much as you can create that space online, there's just so much out there. Like if you go to Amazon, there's 1,000 of the same thing, but you look at the reviews, you look at the product images. Do they feel fake to you? Do they feel like they've just been, generated? I look for people wearing the products. Like, does it look
Mhm.
real? And so you're just trying to create a sense of security in the person. So I think having some website presence is helpful. Especially like I have gone, if someone has a sales page, I will go and Google their business name to see if they have a website. Like if so, it's to see if it's just the sales page. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I do think it creates some level of trust if you have more beyond the sales page.
Yeah, for sure. And especially if you're trying to launch to a cold audience, it's going to
Hmm.
be really hard to launch to a cold audience with no website, no branding.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like if you build that know, like, and trust factor with your email list, then you
Yeah.
know, a beta launch,
Yeah.
take money and reinvest. I almost feel like, and Stacey, I don't know what you think, that you should invest in like branding first.
Yeah.
Like get a brand. I mean, you can't really have a website before you're branding, so invest in someone like Stacey who can create a brand for you and a feel for you, and then you can start adding other components like a website, making your social media look and
Hmm.
feel like your brand, that kind of thing. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I think starting with branding is a really good, important step. I think people, if you're having to decide where you're going to start, I think branding's good. Then you have the foundation to build off of, and then there's a lot of, I don't have a list in front of me right now, but there's a lot of like things that you can use in the interim. Like Canva back at least last year had like a splash page website thing.
Mhm.
It was like a one page. You couldn't like customize the domain, you couldn't do a lot to it, but there's things like that as you're trying to build an online presence that you can use. You just want it to feel professional. So I think branding is an important place to start. Um, and then, yes, I think building your email list and being consistent with that communication, showing up on social. Those are cheaper platforms, I guess, that you can start building that trust. And then, yeah, when it's time, you can invest in, the next pieces.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's say that someone is getting ready for a course launch or they are looking towards the future for a course launch. What kind of design components should they be thinking about as they get ready for that launch? I know there's a lot. What are the main priorities they should focus on?
So you're getting ready for launch. Well, obviously you need your product to be finished.
Right?
But
Yeah.
your product, because I feel like people forget, like you're actively trying to finish like a new offer, right? And then there's the sales page and there's the promotional piece. So make sure you create enough space in your calendar and your plan to finish the product. And that also, because that's like all the pieces in the course with, that people are actually engaging with the slides and things. But then it's actually like, let's say you use Kajabi, for example, all the like graphics to make the course. So the banner, the course module graphics, all of that, right? So there's like the actual course, the nuts and bolts, the actual thing. Then there's putting that into your course platform. So that's finishing the product. And then you need your sales page. Um, and I think a lot of people, they don't give the sales page enough attention. Like I've seen people put so much effort into their product, and then the sales page is like a little half page. And I know that some of those long form sales pages can feel too much, but a happy medium, like something you really need to. When I think about a sales page, you have kind of two sections. The top section is, in lack of better words, like you really pinpointing like your audience's pain points and really like trying to like get them. You're trying. It sounds icky when you talk about it that way, but basically, someone has a problem and you have a solution for them. It's not icky when you think about it like that. You have information that can help somebody. So you're trying to help them understand, like, this is for me. Like you're talking about the problem so they can, well, as they're scrolling through stuff, they're like, Actually, yes. I've been thinking about this recently, and I do feel like I need this. So that's kind of that top page is you're trying to help them understand, like, yes, this is where you need to be. I'm talking to you. So that's the first part of the page. And then introduction. Here's what I have to offer to you. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I have. And then you list out all the module pieces. Make sure you have testimonials throughout there if you can, especially if you've done a beta launch. You try to get some of those reviews and testimonies in there. And then just that bottom half of the page is really explaining what all's in the program. So top half, explaining why someone might need your support. Second half, explaining what's in the program. That's the sales page. We can talk more about the sales page if you want in a minute. But beyond the sales page, there's the actual promotion, like social media graphics for kind of if you're going to do some sort of pre-launch thing, or if you're going to do like a webinar or some sort of core like email series or something like that pre-launch kind of window, what you're going to do to promote it, and then the open cart kind of season of, okay, 2 more days, 3 more days, or what have you. So there's the social media promotional pieces and email too, if you're going to do like email banners or graphics, all of that. So there's kind of like 3 parts: product, sales page, where are people going to check out, how are they actually going to like purchase your product, and then all the promotional components to it. So I would say the first time you do a launch, it's going to feel very overwhelming. So like, that's why I work with people to help, because I've done it and I know all the pieces that need to be done. And it's just like, can feel overwhelming, the long checklist of things. But once you've done it once, I think it's a huge learning curve, and then you just iterate off of that. So.
Yeah, I was about to say that seems like so much. And for a beta launch, like I would not recommend trying to do all of that,
Yeah.
but definitely a sales page. I've heard other course like mentors say, "Oh, I had my sales page on a Google Doc." I'm like, that probably worked in 2019 or 2020, but that's not going to work anymore because there are so many courses and you really have to make your program stand out. So investing in a good sales page and really like focusing on not just the design piece, but the copywriting piece. I feel like I could probably do a whole episode on sales pages because, like Stacey said, they're so important and so many people miss that piece because they're focused on like the actual product, which I get. But yes, create the space in your calendar and make sure that you have time to not only do the course, complete the course, but actually do the sales page. Yeah, lots of things going on with a launch for sure. Okay, so if you're a new course creator, maybe you haven't made any money yet, you might not be ready to invest in a graphic designer, so you're thinking about DIYing. What are the pros and cons? Because I know that I DIY'd in the beginning, so I can speak to this, but I want to know what you think, Stacy.
Let's see, pros. Wait, of DIYing specifically. So pros would be it's definitely cheaper and it can be faster depending on the availability of designers. And if you're like really overwhelmed with the aspect of design, like it's nice to just kind of get that off your plate. So it can kind of create some space DIYing, no, wrong. To DIY it, go back to what I said. It is cheaper, it could be faster. And I guess if you're still trying to figure out what even you're trying to do, like you're not really haven't articulated your thoughts entirely, like you can kind of explore some ideas and kind of still be a little bit, I don't know, open with your concept, like if you're not sure about your project title or like the course title or your business title, like if there's still some gray there, it might be good to kind of DIY it until, because once you've invested in a designer, you don't want to spend a lot of money and then be like, oh, actually I don't like this title anymore. Like it needs to be something that you're kind of like committed to for a little bit, at least for like a couple launches. You want your investment to like last, right? So I would say just cost, right at the beginning, it creates a little bit of flexibility, and then timing, you might be able to do something quicker. But cons, I mean, what I've seen with DIYing, I feel like if we're going to go back to the trusting factor piece, a well-conceived brand that feels comprehensive and kind of feels more complete, feels more like a brand you can trust, and it feels like somebody's actually here and they have a business that they've planned for. They've established a budget, they've set aside a certain amount of money, they have a plan. Like it might not be a lot of money, but they've made a plan, right? They have a plan for like, okay, in the next 2 years, I'm really going to go for it. So you know that they're here for like the long haul, right? You can trust them. They're somebody that you want to invest in. So there's kind of like that mutual trust there when you pay for branding and pay for design. Um, and then also I would say just the product is typically better. Like it's more comprehensive. I work with a lot. Actually, one of my favorite things to do is to take pre-existing design elements that somebody has worked on and then kind of like grow from there. If we're not going to do a full redesign, full rebrand, I'll do like a brand refresh sometimes, and it's like taking a DIY brand, but then like making it blossom, like adding additional patterns, creating sub branding, creating all these other options to kind of like make it go bigger, I guess, if that makes sense. So I feel like DIY branding is a little limited in its abilities, but it's has definitely has some pros. So if that helps.
Yeah, I think I usually tell my students to, kind of try to DIY with Canva in the beginning, beta launch, get some cash, and then reinvest that instead of just being like, oh, I made $5,000. I'm going to go on a trip to Disney World. Like,
Oh,
take that money and reinvest it because once you start, because your beta launch is usually that really warm audience that you've been nurturing. So they don't need like a really professional brand because you've already proven to them that you know what you're doing, even without testimonials yet.
yeah.
Then for that first launch after your beta, you're going to be reaching cold audiences. And like Stacey said, if you have some brand that just looks like you threw it together, it's hard to trust. It's hard to think of that brand as professional. And that reflects on the course. Even if your course is amazing, if your branding is just kind of like, eh, it just, people have a hard time buying into that, especially now with so many options for our courses.
Yeah, that's kind of why I started working. That's kind of why I started doing kind of the working with who I work with because there's just so many great products out there, so much to help people with. There's like people are just, there's a lot of great information out there, but it's not even being like read or seen because the design's just not great. And I know it feels kind of weird or it doesn't feel great, but people make decisions based on what they're seeing, and so I really wanted to help small business owners and course creators and educators have a more professional presence so that their information and knowledge can be heard and make an impact. So
Yeah. So that first impression can really make the decision for them, and you don't want it to be a bad first impression. So yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so switching gears here a little bit, let's talk about AI because I am obsessed with ChatGPT and it does like everything in my business now. So, how can people use AI for design, or can they, or is it just a copywriting thing? What have you used AI for?
I love I love it as well. And um so I was thinking about this the other day. So there's kind of three main kind of AI tools that I use regularly. I'll talk a little bit about each of them, but ChatGPT, and then I have played around with Midjourney, which is a like image creating AI. It's a little confusing to get set up, but in my opinion, because you have to use it through Discord, which is this weird platform I honestly don't understand. So it's for a little younger generation than me, but Midjourney, and then Photoshop has a really cool kind of generative AI that I've used recently. So, but for ChatGPT, so ChatGPT, the most obvious for like a website would be I've used it for clients who have not been able to invest in a copywriter, and so so if I have a copywriter, it's fantastic because the copywriter can really draw stories out of my client and really bring it to life more than I or a computer can. But so I always recommend, if you can, to partner with a copywriter, especially to help really craft your brand voice in messaging. I love working with copywriters, but if I haven't been able, or if my client can't, we've used ChatGPT for filling out the copy and sites. But what I think is really important is to help ChatGPT understand your business before you just say like, give me copy. So typically what I'll do is I'll talk about my clients. I'll be like, hey, my client, or like, I'm writing a website for my client. They are this, this, and this. They really care about this. There are people who are concerned about this. They have these offers, but they're not sure about this. Like I'll talk about, like, I'm just kind of like if I was giving a copywriter a debrief on the client before they start writing copy, I do the same thing with ChatGPT. And from there, I can really get some meaningful copy to help fill out some stuff. So I've used it for copy for sites, but what I really love using it for is in the branding phase. So when my clients have filled out questionnaires or they've given me testimonials or things like that, I'll take the whole testimony and I'll put it in ChatGPT and I'll say to summarize it and give me the main themes, or summarize it and tell me, like, if I give it a lot of information, it's like, okay, synthesize this and give me like the top 5 pain points that these testimonies point to, or like, what do you recommend? Like, what kind of brand archetype is this brand? Like, what kind of words would you use to describe this brand? So I've used it to help synthesize like information to help understand the brand that I'm building more. And so that would be a really great thing to do for your audience, I think, is building, like if they're getting feedback from people, to have it, then put it into ChatGPT and have it, summarize what these testimonials are saying. And you can even tell it, like, what are the commonalities? What are the main themes here? That kind of stuff. And I think it's just a really great partner in brainstorming, if you will.
That is okay. I had to stop you for a second because you
Yeah.
just gave me a really good idea, and I can't believe I haven't thought about this before. That's so good. So I teach my students when they're first starting out to build their email list, and then they send their email subscribers a survey in Google Forms, and it asks them like, how can I help you better, or what's your biggest struggle with their niche? They could just take all that, copy paste it into ChatGPT, and get all of this great copy and pain points. And wow,
You could say, like, use testimonials to and highlight main key points, whatever. Okay, now draft 5, I don't know, social media graphic or social media captions that speak to these points or whatever. Like, you can really use it to build all kinds of content. But I love putting in testimonials and my clients' answers to help draw out. Like, I've asked it, okay, cool. Now that you know all this about my client, like, what are some good brand colors for this client? Like things like that. And I've even asked it, like, okay, so what kind of like icons or logos or visuals would you see fitting this brand? So like you can kind of draw out. I've asked it about fonts too, which it's not like the best with that, but it helps. It can help give you some feedback. But yeah, I really love doing it for, like I said, brand personas, brand archetypes, brand language, and then ask it about colors and all that stuff. So I think of, ChatGPT is like copy and strategy support. Midjourney I've used for like creating custom stock images. So I've had a real estate agent or client, and I didn't want to just grab some random other person's home stock images, or like like Magnolia Homes, like that. I can't do that. So I like put in, and like basically it created stock images for me to use in my proposal, in our graphics and things like that. So it's a crazy tool, but you have to really know what to ask it. I've also used it to create patterns and textures and things for my clients, because I like to create things that you might use in your website background and social media graphics. Like we've done, I think in the past I've given you like, okay, here's 3 or 4 brand patterns that you can use. So I've used Midjourney to help kind of create those. And then Photoshop, this is just something I did recently, and I was personally, I'm still like amazed by it. But I, like, a client had a photo that was a pretty good photo, but she was centered on the page, and I wanted her to be more left, so there's more white space on the page, so there could be text. So I wanted more space on the right side of the page. Well, in Photoshop, I was able to like select a section, delete it, and then be like, okay, I don't know what I said, make more space or something. I told her to do something, and it like created more space, and then it even like added a plant on the side as an option. Yes, it was beautiful. I was like, wow, this is awesome. So like there's some generative stuff like in the photo that when this was recorded, but I posted a photo recently about the entrance of my door. We like redid my door, and in the potted plants in our front yard, or like by our porch, 2 of them don't actually have plants in them, but I added plants to them.
My mind is blown right now. I
Story
haven't
time, and I
explored.
really wanted to post it. So there's some cool AI stuff in the design.
I mean, I've seen AI generated images obviously all over the place, but I haven't gotten into any of the AI image
Well,
stuff.
I don't like the really obvious like generated. Like people, I
Yeah.
think look dumb when they're
Yeah.
right now, anyways. Like if
Like
you're looking
extra
for like
fingers
yeah,
or
if you're looking for like a space age vibe, like more like there's some really cool things you can do with it. But like people, I don't think that's a good. You can't really create people very well. But there are a lot of really cool little things you can do.
and I
So
bet in 5 years it'll be.
I know, scary. It's gonna be.
Gosh, that is insane. Okay. Wow. Okay. So, but I love what you said about, I know everyone knows how to use ChatGPT and it's free. So I think
Mhm.
that could be, oh man, so good for course creators. I can't wait to share that with my students today.
Yeah.
Okay. So switching gears again, because we have a lot of mamas that listen to this show and you have two young kids. So how do you balance that and freelancing? Do you have any advice for someone who is trying to balance all the things right now?
Yes, I think the first thing would be to know that like everything's in like seasons of life. And so when I started, like I said earlier, I started doing this when my second was a newborn. So I was home with, 2.5-year-old and a newborn. And so that like first few years of my business was, I mean, it's also challenging now, but that was challenging a different way because you're really tired with little bitties around and you have such limited time. Um, so I did work a lot in the evenings when I first started, really late nights. I'm kind of a night owl anyways, but I feel like I had more capacity to focus earlier, like when I was younger, when I was younger. I mean, I'm like 37 now, almost 38, but like, I don't know, back in my 32 years, I was able to focus, and I could stay up late and work at night. So, but, that's just a season of life. So like, know that it's not going to be forever. And I remember telling myself a lot too, like, one, I'm doing this to try to like make space. So when my kids went to school, I had a business that I could work and like bring in income for my family and not have to go back to work. So that was my like focus, right? And that's just 5 years of time. Like really goes by so fast. And that's where I'm at now. So my youngest is in kinder, my second is in, or my oldest is in second. So one thing would be just know it's just a season of life. Um, but also like really it's important to focus on your health and like emotional well-being and um, like get sleep. Um, and now um I try to not work in the evenings. I try to really try to do it within the school day. Um, and just know like I don't know, sometimes there are hard deadlines. Like I think most of the time when it's like a launch, that's when it's most like stressful for me because I know things have to get out by a certain time and once you've committed to a date, it's happening, right? So
Mhm.
launches can be a little bit stressful. But otherwise, I think it's like know that this is like you are moving. It's kind of this weird thing, like you are moving the ship forward, right? It is on you to move it forward. But at the same time, like it's not like a die like a do or death situation. Like there's some there's like space for grace here, So kind of finding that balance is important. There's so much mom guilt. Like my kids, my oldest was and is so good at making me feel awful. And I was on the computer, or she'd be like, "Why do you like to help other people more than us?" Is when I
Oh,
tell her about.
God.
I know when I was working on like so. Oh, I'd be like, "Oh, look, I'm trying to help this mom like with her business, blah blah blah." And she's like, "But blah, blah, blah." So kids are real smart and they like to say really smart things. But just know that you're doing what's best for everybody. But also, I was going to say is, find opportunities to be active and to be healthy. Now I play soccer, multiple times in the evenings, and that's really, life giving to me. So just finding things to create a healthy balance. But probably the most important thing would be that it's all a season. So if you feel like right now you need to stay up late to get some things done, that's okay. Like, don't feel guilty or weird about that. If your kiddos are watching TV for an extra 30, 45 minutes because you're trying to get something done, that's okay too. They're not gonna like it's fine.
Yeah.
Get just grace, and it's the season. So
Base for grace. I like
yeah.
that. Yeah, I I hustled. I had to hustle in the beginning, and I feel like a lot of people in the beginning feel like they have to hustle. Maybe they are still working a 9 to 5 and then trying to start this business, and it can feel like a lot, but it doesn't always have to be like that. It's just a season. And that's so. I cannot believe your daughter said that. Though I'm still cracking up about
She's
that.
been too smart for her own good for years.
I
She's
know. Man, my daughter will call me out if I'm on my phone too much. I'm like, you're right. Let me put it away. Oh, children.
yes.
Greatest blessing. So much fun. Okay. All right. This was awesome. So I always ask all of my guests this. Can you tell me one act of generosity that you've done or you plan to do?
Yes. So something that I've done in the past and I hope to do more of, I really love like donating to Donors Choose account, like in our like schools nearby. And I think it kind of helps simplify because there's so much need out there. But like if I get an email and it's a Donors Choose, like this classroom just needs, you know, 40, $50 to do this one thing, like knowing that I could do something and it would impact like 30 kiddos in our community. I love to do that. So I've done that a handful of times. Like every quarter, I'll try to do at least one classroom. But um, I really want to do more as I build out more of my like passive income resources, templates, things like that over the next year. I want to allocate a piece of that to be able to donate more regularly. So it's not just kind of like piecemeal. So
Yeah. I love Donor Shoes. I actually got a full set of calculators through Donor Shoes when I was in the classroom, and that helped a ton because my kids couldn't afford calculators. So that's a
it's
great
just
organization.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you see the direct impact. Whereas, like, if you're donating to some big organization, you may not know where your money goes. So awesome. All right, Stacey. Well, this was amazing. So helpful. I'm still like mind blown about all of the AI stuff, and I can't wait to go explore that more today. But if people are excited about maybe getting some branding, working on a website, tell the viewers and the listeners where they can find you.
Yep. So I'm on Instagram at Stacy Aguilar. Stacy Stacy. I'm sure it'll be linked, but and my name. Just side note, my kiddos when I taught, they'd always spell it wrong because it's Aguilar, but they would spell it like liar, Aguilar. So I'd be
Yeah.
like, "Don't call me a liar." So anyway, at Stacy Aguilar. And then my website's the same, stacyeaguilar.com. Yeah, I like to share things. I like to share behind the scenes of like the projects I'm working on, advice, tips on design, and just things that are going on in my business, and some behind the scenes of just like life as a mom sometimes. So
Yeah, I feel like even if you're trying to DIY, your content can be really helpful. I've learned a lot from you just from working with you and like spacing and white space that I had no clue about before. But also, if you're ready to pay someone, like I recommend Stacy. She will not steer you wrong. Everything she does is beautiful. So if you're ready to invest, definitely hit her up. So thank you so much, Stacy. This was so
of
much fun.
course, yes, I loved it.